Welcome back, Matt. Getting right back to it. You've got a background, as you kind of talked a little bit before, in an education in history, stats and math, etc., to McKinsey, major consulting firm, and now very, very, very entrepreneurial. Share with us how it's evolved for you in your career, how you've evolved in your career, and is this what you've always, remember the expression, this is what I want to be when I grow up? Are you there?
Yeah. I suppose this is the first year where I feel like I maybe actually have to concede that I'm a grown-up. But I actually think things have changed a lot for me. Although there are definitely, I think, some principles or some threads that run through. I suppose the question I've always wanted to answer in my kind of career side of life is, how can I make a difference at scale? How can I have an impact beyond myself? And actually, for a very long time, I would say for most of my, kind of adolescence, my time at university, I assumed that would actually be in the public sector. So I kind of very much came from a family where my parents both worked in the public sector, not in politics, but in public service. And I actually thought that politics might be the vehicle for me to do that. And I think one of the things that I actually find most exciting about what I do now, and most exciting actually just about the idea of entrepreneurship today, is that a lot of the kind of impact and change that I always wanted to have, I now see entrepreneurs having in a way that I assumed only politicians could have had, 5-10 years ago. And that's partly the power of technology, the reach of the internet, the penetration of smartphones into every aspect of our lives. Mm-hmm. But it's also about, I think, people changing the way they think organizationally about, do you need to be the head of a 2 million person civil service in order to make change happen? Or do you actually need to find ways to mobilize networks of people across the world around what they care about? So for me, kind of the nature of what I see as ambition and the nature of what I see as impact has really changed, even though the underlying goal hasn't.
Yeah, that's great. Obviously, you've got some passion in what you're doing, which you need to be successful as you are. And you're in an arena of investment of money and time, certainly, innovation, etc. For example, I love working and engaging with people, entrepreneurs that just have vision that blows my mind about what they're able to do. And tell us what Entrepreneur First offers people, and what you briefly started saying previously about how it all works and what's the differentiation.
Yeah. So I think it's worth stepping back just kind of briefly and saying, why do we exist at all? And, the fact is that we think the world's changing really fast. And, the kind of transition I just described about going from, on micro level, just personally thinking that, there was a certain way of changing the world, and now really believing that technology and entrepreneurship are the way to do that. I think that's a transition that lots of people in my generation and the kind of half generation below are going through at a rate that we've never seen before, probably in human history, simply because of the reach of the internet. Right. And what that means is, I think for the first time in recent times, we're seeing this tidal wave of change about what ambition means for people. And the reason I say this is that I think we're heading to a world where many, many more of the most ambitious, the most talented people will be entrepreneurs. And what I believe very firmly, what Alice believes, the reason we started this company, is that new institutions will have to evolve to meet that challenge. In a world where there are many, many more entrepreneurs, what does a career look like? What does university look like? What does a job look like? And, I think, there's some long-term things there, but actually, particularly outside the US, or more specifically outside Silicon Valley, there are some much more kind of tactical short-term things that need to be answered. So in a world where many more people will be entrepreneurs, where do their co-founders come from? Where does their first check come from? Where does the mentorship and support come from? Right. And actually, I think the institutions that have traditionally answered that question actually evolved in a period where very few people were entrepreneurs, and where it wasn't really necessary or maybe even optimal for many people to be entrepreneurs. And so what EF does, the reason I'm telling you all that is that we've really tried to go back to first principles and say, what is the institution that would need to exist to create the world we're describing. And what we think it means is saying to people, if we assume that we're not going to take you seriously as an entrepreneur until you already have your full team, your fully defined idea, your first product, your first customer's revenue, we're assuming in the way the problem. We're assuming that that's the old world. And so what we need to do is say, okay, so how do we take people as individuals with huge levels of talent and ambition and provide a full service, if you like, to get them to the point where they actually are entrepreneurs, they are founders. Now, we believe, interestingly, in Silicon Valley, this is a solved problem. The culture, the norms, the environment, and some of the institutions there solve this problem. In Europe, it's nowhere near a solved problem. You know, you go walk into any university final year class, ask people what they want to do. Even the ones who want to be entrepreneurs, they can't imagine how they would make that a reality. And so what Entrepreneur First offers them is the chance to be in an environment with their peers. By peers, I mean people who are as smart, as ambitious, as determined as them, to say to them, we'll take a bet on you right now financially. You know, we'll pay your rent, we'll pay a living wage for 3 months to help you figure out what to do, even if you haven't got an idea yet. And we'll provide an environment in which we have serial entrepreneurs who've been there, done that, supporting you day in, day out to actually get you to the stage where you have something viable. So it's really saying, if you think you have what it takes, we'll provide everything you need, from team to money to support, in order to actually take that plunge and give it a go.
So that's, I mean, it's a great opportunity because you take in the fear, the risk, the everything, and you're actually allowing the creative juices, if you will, to just take off there.
Yeah.
How do you analyze if Mark says, I really want to be an entrepreneur. I know I got some great ideas. I haven't put them together yet, but I got it. So how do you look at me and say I'm a great looking, excited guy? What do you do?
Well, that's a really important part of what we do, and you know, I suppose the honest answer is we've now had a lot of practice. So there's about 250 people have now been through Entrepreneur First. By the end of the year, it'll be 450. But you know, we've really been able to narrow it down to a relatively small set of things that we look for and that for us are absolutely critical. So we actually have one test that's relatively objective, and that's because we focus on, as I mentioned earlier, technical talent. So we focus on people who can build breakthrough technology. So what we mean by that is, although we think there are many types of entrepreneurship, and this certainly isn't on our part a judgment that, you know, only tech entrepreneurship is important, we believe that our model suits best people who can build from scratch the products that they want to exist. So one thing we do is we simply look at, can they do that? Do they have the depth of technical expertise? Do they have the track record of actually building, you know, technology products that mean that we can take that back? That's absolutely critical, and we use a whole set of methods to do that, from technical tests to interviews.
So let me, if I may interrupt, let me ask you a question. So if Mark, not a techie guy, understands that not a tech guy, has a great idea for a tech business, does that person fit, or do you match that person maybe with the techie entrepreneur?
Yeah, right now, no, we don't. So at the moment, we focus fully on, you know, Mark's technical counterpart. And again, that's not a belief on our part that Mark doesn't have a role to play in that company.
Yeah.
But what we do believe is that you kind of need in the very early days, and remember, we start on day -100, never mind day 0. Right. In those very early days, what you really need in that founding team of probably 2 people are people who can go from inspiration to execution immediately.
Right.
So over time, we've evolved the model so that it's much more focused on really just people who can do that. What we do, of course, because you need the marketing, the sales, the business development, the commercial, as the company evolves, is we play quite an active role in our company's hiring. So helping them think about, okay, who do I need now to round out this team?
Or what you do, since Mark wasn't qualified the tech part, then you just hire him as your search firm to help you do all that.
Right.
That's what you do.
Exactly.
That's fascinating, and it makes sense. I know now you've gone into Singapore. You're expanding. You're doing some great stuff. I've been fortunate to work with many people globally, which I love, and kind of aligned with what you're talking about there. One of my favorite expressions when I interview executives or startup entrepreneurs for for talent that they're looking for is what's their why, quote unquote, their why. How have you selected, part of your criteria? Do you look for that why when you're talking to people? Do you have certain objectives and philosophy, which you've talked about a little bit, that make you decide, is their why strong enough, or do you coach them that their why has to be better, or how does that look?
Yeah, that's been like, I think, one of the things that we're most excited about in terms of the evolution of the program over the last year is I feel we've reached a much better kind of methodology in finding that. So we don't directly phrase the question like that, but we do talk about something that we think is highly correlated, and that idea is the idea of edge. So we say we look for three things at interview and during the selection process. One is the technical skill I've mentioned. One is a set of character things around determination, which are probably somewhat intuitive. But then the final thing is this thing, edge. And edge is really about saying you don't need an idea to apply to Entrepreneur First. We don't expect you to have a business plan, but we do expect you to have some sort of self-reflection on what is your edge? What is the thing, whether it's a technology or a sector or a problem, what is the area where you're likely to have a competitive advantage? And what we find is that the people who do best on our program are the people who can identify that edge and who want to work in an area where that edge matters. The people who do less well either can't identify edge, or they know what their edge is, but they stubbornly do not want to work in any area where it actually will help them. And the reason that's very linked, we think, to this question of why is that we strongly believe that the best outcomes in startup companies come where there is very strong founder-idea fit. So we don't think there's such thing as a generically strong founder. We actually don't think there's such thing as a generically strong idea. We think it's the fit between the two. And that really comes when the entrepreneur can say why they're doing what they're doing, and they can tell their story. They can answer the question, why you the right founder for this company? So in looking at edge, that's how we look at the why.
No, I like that. It's probably really evident in people that say, I really think we can disrupt this industry type of deal, or make an impact on ABC industry or something like that. Very, very cool. How has your experience with McKinsey helped you and meet challenges and even capture opportunities that you see out there?
Yeah, so McKinsey, as you probably know, is a vastly different environment to a startup. So, Alice and I, when we reflect on this, we reflect on, kind of two categories. One, the stuff we learned at McKinsey, and two, the stuff we had to unlearn from McKinsey. And don't get me wrong, I think we had a great experience there. We were very, very fortunate, in particular with the people we worked with. Many of whom, are friends and mentors, advisors today. I mean, in terms of the kind of what we learned that we kind of stick to now that remain kind of relevant and important today, I think the things that come to mind most of all are threefold. One is, focus on what actually matters. I sometimes think this is 90% of what McKinsey does, is just say, that is true, but it's not what really moves the needle. It's not going to be the thing that makes the difference. And I think it just teaches you day in, day out to say, is this the thing that ultimately matters? So that's the first thing. The second thing is just structure and communication. I think it's remarkable how much of startup life is just say what you do and say why anyone should care. And I actually think the type of communication that McKinsey encourages has been really helpful for that. And then the third thing is really about this kind of belief in talent. There's a risk of that sounding cheesy, but one of the remarkable things about McKinsey's success over what's now a very long period of time is that it's kind of self-confessedly not a firm of deep experts in every field. When you're put on a project as an analyst or an associate, really even sometimes as a manager, it's not because you have the deepest expertise in the area that you're approaching. It's because you have a toolkit and a set of intellectual practices that really allow you to kind of create something valuable despite not being an expert. And I think that kind of belief that talented people working hard in the right environment can achieve something that's almost surprising in how valuable it is, that's core to what we do now as well.
Sounds like their edge, if you will.
Yeah, very much, very much. I mean, there's a bunch of things we had to unlearn. I mean, we had to learn how to not solve every problem, by throwing more resources at it, because in a startup you don't have resources. We had to learn how big organizations are not large versions of startups. More importantly, the other way around, startups are not small versions of big companies. They work in very different ways, and those things have been big learnings too.
There's a great commercial I saw on TV a while back. It's the huge advertising agency, the medium one, and the little one. And the little one is saying, I wonder what Joe and whatever is thinking about in the big one. And the big guys are saying, geez, I wonder what Jane is thinking about back in that little one.
Yeah.
So you got the combo there. It's
Absolutely.
It's hilarious. Couple of personal questions, not too personal. Don't have to get kind of few word answers. Do you have any pets?
I don't. My wife is highly allergic to stuff, cats, rabbits, you name it. So no.
All right, well that handles that thing. How about a favorite activity or sport?
Yeah, well, it's timely that you should ask. Again, kind of bringing this back to my wife, we have a shared goal around fitness in 2016. So at the moment, it's just it's the gym and the cross trainer. But
Cool.
I think running was what it used to be, and maybe that needs to come back.
As long as you don't bang up your back and knees, you're fine, basically.
Well, that's true. I mean, my real thing, although it certainly won't help on any weight loss, is board games. Absolutely obsessed with board games. To the extent that we just moved into this new office where I'm speaking from, and all the meeting rooms are named after our favorite board games.
Now, that's a unique one. I haven't heard that one too often.
There you go. There you go.
Do you have a favorite movie or TV show or anything like that?
Well, I'm one of those people who Netflix has just destroyed their productivity now that I can binge watch everything. Yeah, I mean, we love those kind of big, expansive shows that you can just get totally lost in.
Binge watching type of deal?
Yeah, I mean, I loved The West Wing, I loved Lost, I loved Breaking Bad, I loved Homeland. I've loved these kind of Scandinavian shows. I don't know if you saw The Killing or The Bridge, and unfortunately This is a guilty pleasure. I can watch these box sets forever.
Well, that should be your worst vice, if you will, is doing something like that. How about do you have favorite music, favorite food?
Favorite music, favorite food. Well, my family would make fun of me. My family is very musical, and I'm the least musical person in my family by some distance. I kind of have never really had music that was quite in sync with my generation, I suppose. So my favorite band growing up was REM. That was, but probably about 10 years after REM were actually at the peak of their success. I set myself a goal in 2015 of trying to get to grips with what is this classical music thing all about? Why have people for hundreds of years got excited about Beethoven? Example. I would say that's still an education in progress, but I've been trying to dive deeper into that, and that's been quite fun actually.
It is. Well, I hate to say it, but as you get older, you're liking it more.
There you go.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing all that. That was fantastic.
Thank you.